In this session, we shift from what intelligence is to how we deliberately prepare the ground to use it well. To apply discriminative intelligence effectively, there is the thinking style that sits at the foundation of it all, the art of decomposition. Because no real-world problem presents itself as a single clean decision. It arrives layered, interconnected, and often misleading. Decomposition is how we make it thinkable. To explore this, we'll use a simple but powerful situation: an archer, a bow, an arrow, and a target. At first glance, it looks straightforward: aim and shoot. But when we slow it down, the situation unfolds into many dimensions: posture, tension, timing, distance, wind, focus, and intent. How we choose to decompose this situation determines whether we learn anything useful from it. We'll look at three distinct ways of breaking things down. First, decomposing into parts that add up to the whole, understanding how individual elements combine to produce an outcome. Second, decomposing like a partial derivative, changing one factor at a time to see how it alone demands a change of approach. And third, decomposing for progressive resonance, where improvement happens not by isolating parts, but by aligning them to amplify each other over time. Through the archer's journey, we'll see how different decomposition styles lead to very different insights, and why mastering this art is essential before any serious problem solving can begin. One of the most powerful ways to understand complexity is to break the whole into parts that still add back up to the whole. Think of white light passing through a prism. What looks like a single beam suddenly reveals itself as many distinct colors. And when those colors are passed through an inverted prism, they recombine back into white light. Nothing new was added, nothing was lost. We simply understood what the whole was made of. Now the question is, can we apply the same thinking to a real-world situation? Let's try it with a simple example: an archer hitting a target. At first level, the situation decomposes quite naturally. We need a bow, an arrow, a clear line of sight, a fixed target, complete focus, and the archer himself with the necessary skill. At this level of granularity, we've successfully identified the parts that make up the whole outcome, the arrow landing exactly where it should. But this is only the first prism, because once we see the parts, a deeper question emerges. Is this the only way to decompose the situation? As we go further, the same scenario will help us uncover different thinking styles within the art of decomposition, each revealing a new layer of insight, each enabling a more precise application of discriminative intelligence. And that's where this discussion truly begins. So far, we looked at decomposition by breaking a situation into parts that add up neatly to a whole. Now let's stretch that thinking by loosening one condition at a time. Imagine this: the archer is no longer shooting at a fixed target. The target now moves with time. Its position changes from moment to moment. This immediately raises an important question. Is a fixed target actually mandatory for the archer to hit it? Or is it just a convenient assumption we've been relying on? To deal with this change, the solution must evolve. We still need the bow, the arrow, complete focus, and a clear line of sight. But now we also need something more: exceptional skill. The archer must continuously adjust aim, timing, and release based on how the target moves. What we're doing here is subtle but powerful. We're allowing one condition to vary while holding the other steady and observing how that variation impacts the overall outcome. This is exactly the intuition behind what mathematicians call a partial derivative. You don't need the equations to understand the idea. It's simply this: change one variable, watch the effect, and adapt the solution accordingly. In real-world problem solving, this thinking style helps us move beyond static assumptions and design solutions that work even when the environment is changing. And that's the kind of decomposition that prepares us for reality, not ideal conditions. Now let's push decomposition into territory that feels almost unimaginable. So far, we allowed conditions to change, but what happens when we remove one altogether? Picture this: the archer is blindfolded. There is no line of sight, no visual confirmation of the target. By conventional thinking, the problem is over, the task is impossible. But let's pause and ask a deeper question. Is seeing the target truly mandatory for hitting it? Or is it simply the most common input we've grown dependent on? Mathematically, this still looks like an extension of the same idea, changing inputs and observing impact. But in reality, this is completely a different level of complexity altogether. Because when a critical input disappears, the mind is forced to search for alternatives. Perhaps vision can be replaced with sound. Perhaps spatial awareness, timing, and experience can compensate. Perhaps an exceptionally skilled archer can identify the target through audio cues and internal calibration. This is where decomposition becomes discovery. By removing an assumed requirement, we often uncover new inputs we never considered before. What once seemed mandatory becomes optional, at least at higher levels of mastery. In real-world problem solving, this thinking style helps us escape hidden constraints, redesign assumptions, and build solutions that are not just adaptive, but radically resilient. Let's stay with our blindfolded archer, and now push the situation into layers of complexity that no longer feel obvious at all. The archer cannot see. He relies entirely on sound. But even here, an important question emerges. What actually helps the archer more? Is it hearing more, catching even the faintest sounds from every direction? Or is it hearing better, being able to judge where a sound is coming from with precision? If we slowly and independently improve each ability, something interesting happens. When we enhance raw hearing sensitivity, the archer actually struggles more. Sounds arrive from everywhere, overwhelming his senses and adding noise without clarity. Accuracy doesn't improve, but when we improve the archer's ability to extract spatial meaning from sound, to judge direction, distance, and movement, even without extraordinary hearing sensitivity, his accuracy improves in a predictable and reliable way. One capability amplifies confusion, the other directly sharpens performance. What we're doing here is no longer just removing or varying inputs. We're transforming the problem into a different representation, separating what truly carries information from what merely adds volume. If you enjoy mathematics, you'll recognize this intuition behind tools like the Fourier transform, where signals are reorganized to reveal what actually matters. Now let's add another twist. A gentle breeze begins to blow. At first glance, it seems irrelevant, but the breeze alters how sound travels. Sound waves drift with the wind, meaning the direction from which the archer hears the sound is no longer the true direction of the target. The archer's brain now perceives the target as shifted. How do we respond? One instinct might be to make the arrow heavier so the wind doesn't affect it, but that only works if the archer can see. In this case, the problem isn't the arrow, it's misperception. Now imagine doing the opposite. Make the arrow lighter, light enough that it drifts with the breeze in almost the same way the sound does. Now something remarkable happens. The same wind that distorted perception also shifts the arrow's path. The illusion introduced by the breeze is compensated by the physics of the shot. The error cancels itself. If you enjoy mathematical thinking, this is exactly how perturbation theory works. Small disturbances are not ignored, but deliberately modeled and counterbalanced. But even without equations, the thinking approach is clear. We didn't fight complexity, we aligned with it. And that's the deeper lesson here. As problems grow more complex, solutions don't come from brute force or more inputs. They come from reframing, re-representing, and carefully aligning interacting effects. This is decomposition at its most powerful. Not just breaking things apart, but understanding how subtle changes resonate, interfere, and sometimes cancel each other out to produce a solution that works in the real world. As we wrap up, what matters most is not the scenario we explored, but the shift in how we approached it. The art of decomposition isn't about breaking things down for the sake of analysis. It's about changing what we notice. Each layer we examined revealed assumptions we didn't realize we were making, and with every assumption questioned, new degrees of freedom emerged. When we decompose thoughtfully, complexity stops being intimidating and starts becoming informative. Subtle influences become visible. Interactions replace isolated causes, and solutions begin to appear not as single answers, but as spaces of possibility shaped by how deeply we're willing to inspect the situation. This is how deeper analysis expands creative outcomes, by exposing where intervention actually matters. In the next session, we'll take this one step further. We'll look at how to anchor these thinking styles into concrete thinking frameworks, so this way of seeing doesn't remain intuitive or accidental, but becomes deliberate, repeatable, and applicable across real-world problems. That's where insight turns into method.